Please face the flag. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come together today, we give you thanks for the good gifts you give us. We ask for your guidance in our lives, and we pray that your love would live amongst us. Amen.
All right, Council, we've got minutes from the regular City Council meeting of August 1st and the called meeting of the Tax Increment Financing Board number 3 of August 1st, 2022. Everybody have the opportunity to review those minutes?
Move to approve. Second.
Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next item is for citizens' comments. If you're here to address items on the public hearing, you can wait till that time. These are just regular comments to the council. Does anybody here have any comments for the council of any item that's on the agenda this evening? Okay. If not, council will proceed to the consent agenda. This is the second meeting, so we'll have 2 consent agenda listings. The first one is regular consent. The second one is consent per the staff review letter. So we'll take C1 first. These items are considered to be routine and enacted in one motion without discussion. Unless a council member or citizen requests a specific item be discussed and voted on separately. These items are G4, G5, G6, G7, G8, and G9. Anyone like these broken apart for any reason?
I'll make a motion for approval of the consent agendas.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion and subject to the staff review letter without discussion unless a council member or a citizen requests a specific item be discussed and voted on separately. Consent agenda subject to staff review letter includes items H3, H4, H5, H6, H7, H8, H9, H10, H11, H12, and H13. Would anybody like these broken apart for any reason?
I'll make a motion for approval of the double asterisk consent agenda, subject to the staff review letter.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. All right. This time we will open public hearing. We have the Capital Improvement Program 2022 through 2027. Mary?
Yes, the 5-year capital improvement program was developed by the City Council at a workshop held on May 26th. A public hearing was held at the August 1st council meeting. The plan is unchanged from the August 1st meeting, and approval for the plan will be by resolution on the agenda later today.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Not, Linda, if you'll read D2 for us, please.
Ordinance 6508, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman adopting a budget and providing for the appropriation of funds for operating and capital expenditures for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022, and ending September 30th, 2023. Declaring that this budget will raise more total property taxes than last year's budget by $2,760,000 and 14%. And of that amount, $476,000 is tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax roll this year.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Mary?
Yes, this is the second and final public hearing on the budget. The budget is unchanged from the last public hearing on August 1st, and adoption of the budget will be by ordinance on this same agenda tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. If not, Linda, will you read D3 for us, please?
Ordinance 6509, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman providing for the levy of ad valorem taxes for the City of Sherman, Texas for the tax year 2022, distributing the same among the various funds, providing for a penalty and interest for failure to pay the taxes levied within the time provided by law, providing for a lien of all real and personal property to secure payment of taxes due thereof, providing a penalty clause.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Mary?
Yes, this public hearing is required before the council considers the adoption of the tax rate tonight. The proposed tax rate is 0.4666932. a decrease from the current year tax rate of 0.489. The M&O rate is about 26.5 cents. The debt rate is about 20.5 cents, and will generate altogether almost $22 million in property taxes.
Thank you, Mary. Is there anyone to address this item this evening? Linda, if you'll read D4 for us, please.
Ordinance 6510, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Chapter 9 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Personnel, Article 9.05 entitled Civil Service for Firefighters and Police Officers, at Section 9.05.026 entitled Authorized Number of Positions, to revise the number of authorized positions in the Police Department and Fire Department.
Thank you, Linda. Zach?
Couldn't find me over here, could you? This is to stay in line with the city's charter and civil service, and to amend the ordinance to reflect the number of sworn positions that will be funded in FY23, which would give the police department 78 and the fire department 94 sworn positions.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Okay. Linda, if you read D5 for us, please.
Ordinance 6511, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman approving the 2022-2023 Annual Service and Assessment Plan update for the Belair Village Public Improvement District.
Thank you, Clint.
This ordinance will approve the annual service plan for the Belair Village Public Improvement District. This details out the assessment for each lot as it's sold and developed. The city isn't responsible for any of the plan costs or the infrastructure reimbursement costs. We will have an agreement to assess the fee through the appraisal district. And so far, for the plan, there's about $9.1 million of public infrastructure, streets, water, sewer, drainage that qualifies for reimbursement in this assessment plan. To date, they've spent close to $8 million of that $9 on infrastructure and are currently building homes.
All right. Thank you, Clint. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Yes. You'll come up and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Josh Arndt with Unicap at 600 East John Carpenter Freeway, Irving, Texas 75062. And we serve as your Public Improvement District Administrator for the Belair Village PID. And just a quick summary of the annual report. This annual update is required per Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Government Code to address a few different items. One, or to address any changes to the improvement budget of the capital improvements themselves. There have been a few line item changes on the cost of the road and the water improvements, for example. The one thing I would just like to highlight, if, for example, there were additional costs above the $9.1 million cost in the assessments, those costs would have to be carried by the developer. It would not result in any additional increases in assessments to property owners. The second item is regarding trigger. This is the first year. This is our second annual update of the report. Last year, we did not have any building permits issued within the district, so there were no annual installments billed or collected. This year, through the end of June, we had 86 building permits issued, so there will be 86 properties being billed this upcoming tax cycle. More than likely, I'm assuming the builders are the current owners, so they'll be the ones responsible for paying those this winter and due by January 31st of 2023. You can see on table D2, if you had a chance to review the report, that total budget includes principal and interest due for the terms of the reimbursement agreement and an administrative expense component billed to those respective properties. The next item to address within the report are any changes to the assessment methodology, of which there have been none. The next component would be any parcel subdivisions, of which we did have a phase 1 plat that was recorded back in June of 21, which subdivided the 333 residential lots within phase 1, of which there's 327 residential units. and 86, like I mentioned, have building permits issued. So those will be billed annual installments this year. However, if you notice the assessment roll, it does list all 327 residential units on it. That's required under the act. Just the ones that did not have a building permit issued will have a 0 listed for their annual installment. However, it is beneficial, as the development moves forward. If, for example, a property owner wanted to prepay, they could do so, and that would not require any additional action by council regarding indicating that amount of assessment. So, since in this report, it is recognizing that amount of assessment. What this report is just looking to update is the improvement cost budget, establishing the annual budget for the upcoming cycle, and allocating those amounts to be billed to each property. And with that, we'll be working with staff pending approval of this report to make sure that those amounts would get forwarded to the tax collector's office for billing and collection. And happy to answer any additional questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else to speak on this item this evening? Okay. Not Linda, if you'll read D6 for us, please.
Ordinance 6512, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Chapter 3 Building Regulations, Article 3.12, Flood Damage Prevention of the Code of Ordinances, City of Sherman, Texas, establishing new regulations designed to minimize flood losses, defining terms, delegating authority to the floodplain administrator, requiring a floodplain development permit, setting forth variances, procedures, establishing flood hazard reduction standards, adopting flood insurance rate maps.
Thank you, Linda. Clint?
Yeah, Junior, if you'll go ahead and go to the second slide real quick. So in 2017, the city hired Half Associates to look at the Post Oak Creek flood our drainage basin, to look at our maps, our current data, and update that data with more accurate information. In 2018, that study was complete and submitted to FEMA for their map adoption. It is 2022, so it's taking a few years for FEMA to go through their process and update those maps, but they have officially accepted our data and are expected to publish those maps next month. Part of their requirement to update those maps was that we review our floodplain ordinance, which is what this public hearing is actually about, and go through and make sure everything that we have is current, that meets FEMA guidelines. So when we found that out, we reached back out to Half, and Audrey is here, and she has a few slides to present on what those updates to the floodplain ordinance were. And then I'll catch back up on a few details of this map that kind of explain areas where there's been some updates.
So as Clint mentioned, we've updated the floodplain ordinance that you guys currently have. It's Article 3.12. There were quite a few alterations that we made. Some of this is going to get pretty technical, so I'm going to try not to bore you guys while still giving you the information that you need. So we only removed one definition. There are extensive lists of definitions included as part of this article, which go towards educating those who are attempting to do floodplain work within the city limits and the ETJ. So we removed a definition concerning future conditions, which this city does not require. We added several definitions, including a few things that are considered good housekeeping, such as conditional letter of map amendments and conditional letters of map revisions. Non-residential structures, elevation certificates, critical facilities, all of these things are pretty standard. There's nothing outside of the ordinary here as far as your comparative cities are concerned. Forward. Several sections received some changes, including the floodplain administrator responsibilities. We added that they must maintain a variance record, which is exactly as it sounds. It's a record of all of the variances that the floodplain administrator has allowed or has approved. And they must review and respond to all CLOMers and LOMers. Those are conditional letters of map revisions and letters of map revisions that would go to FEMA that are submitted by consultants on behalf of the city. to ensure that they match what y'all are looking for, they match your standards. And that's generally that's a pretty common practice. We also added that the city may require an additional third-party review fee for more complex projects. We know that they're updating constantly the software that consultants use, and in some cases that may get out of the breadth of the staff here, in which case they are more than welcome to sub that out. We've included that the floodplain development permits will be required for all development in special flood hazard areas. Those are those areas on FEMA flood maps that show up in color because there's something going on there, because they have a increased risk of flood. And that models are now required for development within those areas. That's to prove no adverse impacts to people upstream or downstream from them, from where that development is occurring. Variances shall be handled by the Board of Adjustments as established in the city ordinance. That's not anything new. We did change the language there because the previous language was referencing older terminology that has since been updated in that accompanied ordinance through the city.
I would just add a lot of that stuff the engineering department's already been doing. We just added teeth to what we were asking developers to provide to us to ensure we were meeting everything that we needed. Floodplain area.
Certainly. Okay, we did add a new section, and this is important because this allows for enforcement and enforcement of violations of your floodplain ordinance, which is a good thing for you guys. Violations include, these are also pretty standard: developing a floodplain without a development permit, failure to return property to a previous state if they did develop in the floodplain without a permit, and deviating from any of the regulations established in the article. This is pretty standard. Your enforcement has already been outlined in a previous article that you guys have. So that was a nice little segue into a previous article that you guys have existing. Section 3.12.072, manufactured homes must be built 3 feet above the base flood. This is a FEMA standard. The previous ordinance said 2, which was at the time that the article was originally written. When in accordance with FEMA, FEMA has since updated that. So to stay in lockstep with FEMA, that had to be updated for you guys as well. As well as the manufactured homes must be securely fastened so that they will not float or collapse or with the intention to not cause other movement during floods or flood events. We did receive one comment from FEMA whenever this was sent to them for kind of their blessing. The previous wording of the ordinance said that it allowed a condition where the staff may be aware of areas that are prone to flooding or drainage related issues where the FEMA flood maps may not, the mapping may not extend that far. So FEMA flood maps are generally, in this case, based on riverine flooding, but the city staff may have knowledge of more local flooding. And so we've added a clause here that allows the city to enforce this article in areas where there are known flood hazards by the city staff. And that known flood hazard has been added as a definition as part of this article so that that's clear to everyone who reads it. These are just some examples of the map changes that have provided to the city.
Yeah, so I'll jump in for you because you weren't a part of this study back
That would be great.
when we started this. So this is actually, I know not on purpose at all, but this is the Hickory Hill development, which we're going to be talking about here in a second. Lambeth Road is up here. Carriage Estates development is here. And this is an NRCS dam. We call it Site 8A that was built in 2000. In 2010, FEMA updated their maps, and the hatched pattern was or as of today, is the effective floodplain. As you can see, usually when you put a big giant dam somewhere, the floodplain gets wider behind it and doesn't stay the same way all the way through. And so the previous map didn't account for the dam at all. And so when when HAF updated the data, you can see here that the floodplain on the backside of the dam got significantly larger. And then downstream of the dam, also you would expect that floodplain to get narrower. So this is an area where the map was representing risk, but it was representing it wrong. And so just because you don't live in one of these areas doesn't mean that you're not going to flood ever. It just means these are the areas of highest risk. And so these maps are put together just to be more accurate with what we know. So go to the next one, Junior. So this is an area, Archer Street Apartments. And you can see there, this area, it grew, and then the backside here got smaller. Creeks tend to move over periods of time. And when we went out and got updated topo, you can tell that the creek has shifted to the north. In 07, we actually have two inspectors, Jerry and Tim. They actually did a survey after the 07 floods and knocked on doors in this area right here. So we have on the ground representation that area does flood. FEMA's map showed it being outside the flood zone. So if you were to buy one of those homes, no one would tell you that it flooded in 07, and you probably wouldn't have insurance. Now, luckily, it hasn't flooded since, but it is in that area that is a risk. So that's an area that will be added to that map. So this is probably this tributary, the Sand Creek tributary, is probably the most affected by the updates. But there's little areas through there that were added. There's also some tributaries where FEMA just stopped their study for whatever reason, that we extended it further up the creek. And so those areas will be better modeled and better shown on these updated floodplain maps. Again, we're not making it better or worse for anybody. This had nothing to do with any infrastructure projects that the city did. These are just taking the topo and the drainage basins as are and being more accurate with what's going on in flooding situations. So, any questions?
All right, so thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
After we close public hearing, we'll ask questions.
Certainly.
Is there anyone here to speak on this item this evening? Okay. Linda, will you read D7 for us, please?
Ordinance 6513, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman ordering an election of the qualified voters of the City of Sherman, Texas on the 8th day of November, 2022 for the purpose of electing 2 district city council members for said city, providing that said election shall be held jointly with Grayson County, Texas, designating election precincts, appointing election officials, providing for notice of said election, providing for the use of direct recording electronic voting equipment, providing for early voting.
Okay. All right, you want
Yes, this requires the state's fulfillment that of the way to call the election for November 8th.
okay. All right, is there anyone here to speak on this item this evening, calling the election? Okay. Not, will you read D8 for us, Linda?
Ordinance 6514, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 12, ordinance number 2280, so as to include certain property within the R1 one-family residential district located at 715 North Elm Street, being Lot 18, LC Chapman's addition.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this item is for rezoning from a C1 district to an R1 district to build a single-family home. They originally got a specific use permit to build a single-family home, but that's since expired. The property is just north of here, and it's kind of in the middle of construction. A building official has inspected it and deemed that it can be continued on being constructed. Planning and zoning recommended approval 6-0.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening? Not, Linda, will you read D9 for us, please?
Ordinance 6515, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 5A, ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow a Montessori school grades 3 through 12 in a C1 retail business district, O-1.1 FM Highway 1417 overlay district at 5615 North FM 1417 Heritage Parkway, being 3 acres in the John Good Survey, abstract number 468.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Rob?
This item is for a specific use permit to allow a Montessori school in a C1 district. They're currently proposing, this is actually where the applicant is proposing is temporarily located in this Leap of Faith church. They'll be subleasing this space. Planning and zoning recommended approval 6-0.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anyone here to address this item this evening?
I'm Bailey Cowart. I'm representing Heart of Texoma Montessori Academy, and I'm just here to make sure that if any questions or concerns needed to be addressed, that we were open and available. We have a great group of families that are excited about coming on board with our teachers and our staff, and so we are looking forward to this great opportunity.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Anyone else? So for the next three items, for transparency purposes, I'm going to hand the meeting over to our illustrious deputy mayor,
Thanks.
and I will dismiss myself.
Come back though.
Aye. Okay, Linda, would you please read D10 for us?
Ordinance 6516, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 12, Ordinance number 2280, so as to include certain property within the R1 one-family residential district located at 2305 and 2615 Greystone Drive, being 19.95 acres in the Samuel M. McLaughlin Survey, abstract number 811.
All right. Does anyone have any comment? And Rob, would you please do an explanation of it for us?
And Ms. Howarth, this item number 10 and number 11 are connected.
Mhm.
So I'll do an intro of both of those.
That sounds
If
like a
that's
great
all right
idea.
with you.
That would be great.
Item number 10 is for rezoning from a C2 district, commercial, to an R1 single family district. The applicant is proposing to build 99 single family homes at this location. Planning and zoning heard this last month and recommended approval 6-0.
All right. Comments from the public? Any questions? All right, then Linda, will you please read D11?
Ordinance 6517, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 8, subsection 58, Ordinance number 2280, so as to grant a specific use permit to allow patio homes in an R1 one-family residential district at 2305 and 2615 Greystone Drive, being 19.95 acres in the Samuel M. McLaughlin Survey, abstract number 811.
Rob, do you have anything else to
Yeah,
add?
and just to continue on, the applicant is wanting to develop patio homes. The 99 lots that I mentioned would be 50-foot lots. They are proposing to include 12% open space. The requirement for this development by ordinance is 10% open space. So they would provide a wet pond and a trail surrounding it and connecting throughout the neighborhood. Planning and zoning approved the specific use permit 6-0.
Does anyone have comments or questions? Anybody here to speak to this? Okay, that'll be great. Come on up, Taryn.
Good evening, Council. My name is Taryn Berthoff, and my office address is 118 West Chestnut Street, Denison, Texas. This development, named Evergreen Parks, will consist of 99 patio homes, 34,000 square feet of park space, a pond, walking trails around the park and pond, and a row of evergreen trees on the west side. I'm a native of Sherman and have a passion for delivering quality products. And this development, right now we're in talks with several national home builders and regional home builders, assessing which builder is going to fit the site best and the quality we want to present with the city. I've read the staff review letter. I'm agreeable to all of the changes. Already talking with city staff about how to handle certain items on the review letter, and my engineering group's updating the plans based off of the city staff recommendations. One item in the review letter mandates the widening of Greystone Road from 19 feet to 24 feet. That's only along the frontage of this property, but there's a small segment on the east side between this property and Village Drive, where while the traffic impact analysis doesn't suggest any improvements to the road, I believe it's best for the interest of this development and surrounding community that I go beyond what staff review letters requires in this instance and pay for the road to be widened beyond the property's boundary to Village Drive on the east of the property. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Taryn.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no one else that has anything to say on this, are you coming to speak, sir? Thank you. you please
Good
give us?
afternoon.
Okay.
My
we
name
need
is
your name
Thad
and-
Thompson. My address is 3706 Heatherwood Lane. I'm just here to put some numbers and some facts between before the council. I'm not opposed to the project. From the U.S. Department of Transportation rail crossing database, there are 8 trains on that crossing daily. I just thought the council should know that. In front of or parallel to the railroad track running north and south, there's a drainage ditch. At the road, it bows to the east, and the head walls on the culvert where the road goes across at the east end are 22 feet. At the west end is 24 feet. If I'm not wrong, I believe that's crossing or the culvert is on the BNSF right of way. So in order to widen the road more than 22 feet at that culvert, I believe we're going to have to get permission from BNSF, and somebody is going to have to front the cost of widening that culvert to 24 feet if that's the width the road's going to be. At the east end, it's only 22 feet. That basically is a 1-lane road at this point in time. That culvert drops off 3 feet on each side at least. So if somebody, and there has been people go off in that ditch. We thought whenever the city paved the road, which they recently did, that they would widen that area, but that didn't happen. We're talking about 99 units, 200 cars, 400 people, 200 kids, at least 100 of them school age, necessitating at least 3 and possibly 6 school buses each morning and afternoon. Before I would, if the council was to okay this project, I would ask that they do it with the supposition that culvert and the road get widened so it's sufficiently wide to handle the traffic that's going to be coming in out of there. I live just behind on the east side of that property. We have about 100 or about 50 homes in our subdivision. So there's like 100 cars coming, well, not all of them, but at least 50 coming in and out each day. So that when the traffic from the proposed subdivision is going to put a load on that road. So I would hope that, and I would also like, if I could, to have Mr. Berthall talk to his market research about how big these homes are going to be, what the cost is going to be, who's going to be able to afford them. At the zoning board meeting, we were told the homes would be in the upper 300s. A $375 home with a conventional 5% loan would be $1,610 a month, about $9,000 in real estate taxes, and at least a couple of $1,000s in homeowners insurance. So we're looking at about $2,500 a month for somebody to afford to live in one of these homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bob, do you have any comments? It always scares me when they mention railroad.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll let Clinton jump in and correct anything I misstate here, but I think one of the things that the city staff will be approaching this project with, both this project and the one to the south, is that Greystone Drive will be improved as part of this project, and most likely improved through the city of Sherman. The developer, however, has agreed to pay for these improvements, widening it to 24 feet. So instead of widening the road today, we believe that there may be a need for it to be different or wider than even 24 feet if the property to the south develops as well. So what we are likely proposing is that the developer put into escrow funds to the city. We'll use those funds along with any other funds that happen on the development south to widen the road. So is it Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson's concerned about how wide it needs to be, and the culvert drop-offs and all will be handled by our city staff or engineers or consulting engineers at the right time. So, I mean, I think the news for this one is developer has agreed to pay for these improvements. They'll be escrowing the funds if that's what we want to do. And then we'll determine at the right time in the next probably 12 months what that scope of widening or improving or replacing Greystone Drive would be. So,
Clint, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, even when you're widening a road, it's going to require us to coordinate with the railroad. So we would have to get railroad permits and make sure all that's lined up. So we're going to do that for the road anyways. Then we would obviously also look at the drainage culverts to make sure they're wider, because they probably need to be more. If it's a 24-foot road, you probably need more than 24 foot of culvert. You probably need closer to 30 foot of culvert. And so that would be something that we would definitely look at. Make sure that the end treatment safety works and is safe for drivers going back and forth through there.
Okay, thank you. If there's nobody else who has comments to make. Oh, yes, sir. Please step up and say your name and address, please.
A.D. Anderson, 2512 Village Drive. We're the first house right there on the corner of Greystone and Village, right there. One of the things we were just discussing recently, in accordance also with the last two projects that failed, to go in there, was the railroad crossing. Now, my wife and I and a few other neighbors were working with your engineer, Wayne, as far as resurfacing and repairing East Greystone, and they did a really good job for what they did. But the main thing that I was trying to get a hold of there the last 2 weeks is how to, structurally widen that spot there at the railroad crossing. And he kind of led me to believe that we don't really have a structural engineer that knows how to put steel beams, concrete to reinforce it, to widen it. Now, he put longer culverts in there and it looks really good. It's just, he said we were limited. We had to put it back the way it was until I guess they get with an engineering firm to, figure out exactly how they're going to work all that. One of the recent things we were discussing, and I guess we failed to do the last two times, was where's the water line come in? My understanding is it comes in off of Frisco into our subdivision on the side of Greystone, and it's like an 8-inch line. Well, in the mornings with people, watering, especially this summer the way they do, and afternoon taking showers and still watering some more, our water pressure, we really noticed, because my wife and I have some really beautiful landscaping there if you ever go by, and we're constantly watering ourselves. And we noticed that, okay, it goes down quite a bit in the mornings and the afternoons. What's that going to do putting these other 99 homes into that same line? And they're going to take off it before it even gets to our subdivision right there. And now sewage, I understand, it goes towards the main sewer line, goes through our neighborhood, but there's one that goes along the railroad track on that side too, if I'm not mistaken. So that was one of the other questions that got brought up with some of the neighbors, what's the effect going to be with the water and sewage, and I don't guess we have anybody here with water and sewer here tonight for representing the city. So that was a question we needed to ask,
So Wayne is out, but behind you is another guy that may or may not. I don't want to put him on the spot. But, typically, I would say if you notice when we updated our floodplain ordinance earlier, we required modeling to be done. And so we are in the process of doing a master water and sewer plan. And fortunately, a big part of that is our water model. And so now anytime the development like this comes up, we forward that information to our water modelers and have them run an analysis on it. They recently calibrated the model, I believe, and are 95% finished. And so it is. So anytime we add, we can just plug, it's kind of like Legos now. We can plug it in and see what it does to the pressure around there to help ensure that is it an 8-inch line that needs to be extended? Is it a 12-inch? To make sure that the pressures, not just in your neighborhood, but all of Sherman, we're looking at CIP projects to make sure that pressure stays.
So
where
if
it
we
needs
need to
to.
put in another lift station or pump somewhere else.
Yeah, now, yeah, without knowing the specifics of this development, I can't talk to it, but I
Right.
do know that Tom is constantly requesting
I think on your plot
our
plan,
consultant
you
to
had
look
a
at
Canadian
developments.
flag running through your subdivision there. So I assume that's where they're taking off of, is right there on that line for your subdivision. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Again, your name and address.
2512 Village Drive. My main concern is the train. I leave every morning going to school, to work, and that train likes to come around 7 o'clock when a lot of people want to go to work. And what I'm really concerned with is that train always stops because it's switching out and all that. Greystone gets blocked. A lot of times Dripping Springs is blocked, and also Baker is blocked. We have to go a long ways to get to the west side of town. And if we're going to add 99 homes, all those people, if they want to go to work and the train's sitting there, and sometimes it's up to 15 minutes. It's nothing against this development, but we can't wait 15 minutes to get to work. And so I have to go a roundabout way. And now North Baker is gravel. When they did the blacktop, they tore up North Baker also, but left it. Said it had a good enough base or something, I'm not sure, but it's only gravel road now. So we have to take a gravel road and go under an overpass of 82 and go over by the government housing on South Baker to get out. But if that one's blocked, we got to keep going down to College. And so I'm just concerned because all this traffic from that development is going to come in our subdivision. And we're that first house right there. And they're all going to be coming to try to find a way to get to work on the west side of town. And so that's just my main concern there. And also thinking here that we all walk the streets, us older people. We don't have sidewalks. We're going to add a lot of cars, and we just want to still be able to walk. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak to this issue? We appreciate you all coming and calling it to our attention. And I know that our city staff will look into your concerns and we'll address them as they come up. And so will Mr. Berthoff. Thank you. All right. Linda, could you read D12, please?
Ordinance 6518, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman amending Section 12, ordinance number 2280, so as to include certain property within the R1 one-family residential district located at 1016 East Cherry Street, being a portion of Lot 3, Block 2 of Hazelwood and Baden Addition.
All right. Rob?
This is a request for rezoning from a C1 to an R1 zoning district for a single-family home. Planning and zoning recommended approval 6-0.
Is it? Yeah. All right. Again, would you please provide your name and address?
Christopher Wyatt, 4308 Ridgewood Road, Melissa, Texas, 75454. I'm the owner. It is a single family residence. It's 102 years old, always been a single family residence to my knowledge. We put it back together from an uninhabitable single family home, and it is a single family home surrounded by single family homes. I have no idea why it came up as a surprise as being zoned commercial, and it would do great things to be zoned residential again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else that has comments to make on this specific ordinance? If not, then we will close public hearing and consider the adoption of the ordinances. And do you want to text him or call the mayor back? Been eating all our cookies in there.
All gone.
Are all the cookies gone? Oh, okay.
I left.
All right, good.
Okay.
We've closed public hearing, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We are to item E1 then.
Sure. We haven't voted.
All right.
Got to vote E1. We have to vote on it and then we vote down here.
Providing for the ratification of the property tax increase.
Okay, Mary.
Yes, we have a few items to adopt as a result of what the state requires us to do for adopting the budget and the tax ordinance. This item is related to the adoption of the budget. It's required to be a separate vote from the budget. It is required if the adoption of the budget will require raising more property taxes in the current year than the previous year and the year that's in the budget to be adopted. So even though the rate is decreasing, the amount of revenue the city will be receiving is increasing. Therefore, this is required by the local government code. So ratification of this item should be by motion and order with the prescribed wording and a record vote of each council member.
I move to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the budget.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council.
Mayor, did you vote?
Yes, I voted in the affirmative. Linda, if you'll read F1 for us, please.
F1?
Yes, please.
Yes. It's the same as D2.
Ordinance 6508, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman adopting a budget and providing for the appropriation of funds and operating for capital expenditures for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022 and ending September 30th, 2023, declaring that this budget will raise more total property taxes than last year's budget by $2,760,000 and 14%. And of that amount, $476,000 is tax revenue to be raised from new property added to the tax roll this year.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Do we have a motion on this one, council?
Make a motion to adopt 6508.
Second. Okay, motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. All right, we're to F2.
Ordinance 6509, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sherman providing for the levy of ad valorem taxes for the City of Sherman, Texas for the tax year 2022, distributing the same among the various funds, providing for a penalty and interest for failure to pay the taxes levied within the time provided by law, providing for a lien of all real and personal property to secure payment of taxes due thereof, providing a penalty clause.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.469932 per hundred, which is effectively a 13% increase in the tax rate.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we are to F3, the adoption of the other ordinances.
Okay, so.
I will excuse myself again.
Right.
Okay.
Try again.
Conversation.
You're on F3.
Okay. All right. So we are going to consider the adoption of the ordinances. Is there any discussion before we consider the adoption by anyone here, any of the council? Is that thinking? Or-
Yeah. There's a lot of them at one time.
If not, can I get a motion?
I would move to approve 65, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 as written.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Right. Then we can bring the mayor back in if you would, please. Getting his exercise going in and out. So, and we'll move on to resolution 6938 as soon as the mayor gets in. Okay. We're now down to 6938, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right.
Thank you all for coming. Give him just a moment.
Yeah, I'll let the room clear.
Wait for the Skyrider Day.
Yeah, I'll wait for a moment.
Everybody that stayed, this is when we start handing out the free money. So congratulations. Come see Robbie after the meeting.
All right. We're to propose resolution 6938 approving a 5-year capital improvement program for the city of Sherman, Texas. Mary?
Yes, this is the resolution to adopt the 5-year capital improvement program that we talked about earlier during the public meeting. So we've given notice and held the hearing, and staff now recommends adoption of the resolution.
Okay. Council, any questions, discussion, motion?
I'll make a motion for the adoption of 6938.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. All right, Linda, if you'll read G2 for us, please.
Resolution 6939, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sherman awarding a bid to and authorizing execution of a contract with the Public Restroom Company for the purchase and installation of site improvements for the Martin Luther King Park Restroom Replacement Project.
Good evening. This resolution awards a bid to the Public Restroom Company to replace the restroom at MLK Park. They scored the highest on our scoring criteria, and they were also the lowest bid. Questions?
I like the company name. Let's just go for it.
Very creative.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 6939.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. Linda, if you'll read G3 for us, please.
Resolution 6940, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sherman authorizing execution of a master development agreement between the City of Sherman and Sherman Hickory Hill LLC for the construction of public facilities of the planned development known as Hickory Hill, being an approximate 150.434 acre residential development west of Carriage Estates Road in the City of Sherman, Texas.
Thank you, Linda. Clint?
This is another step of action for this development. As you remember, you approved a plan development and annexation request this summer. This is a master development agreement on some of the infrastructure costs that are going to be shared for this development. It outlines who pays for what, including a dedication of over 20 acres of parkland. Junior, if you go to the next slide. It shows that the city is responsible for the off-site sewer, and we're also going to expand Lambert Road, all 4 lanes through Carriage Estates. And then once it gets to this section of the development, the extension of Lambert Road, as shown in green here, and Friendship Road, as shown in green there, will be a shared cost with the developer at 50%, and will include 2 lanes of concrete curb and gutter set up for ultimate design of 4 lanes like we've done on Moore Street. Sherman Hickory Hill will also be responsible for some of the park improvements and dedication of all the internal streets and needed utilities for that development. They're hoping to get started construction this year and making a hard push for that. In the future, there will be an engineering contract that we'll bring for you for approval. We will have the contract for Lambert and Friendship Road. And then there will also be most likely a reimbursement agreement. We're hoping to synergize their contractor with ours and do all this construction at the same time.
One other element of that that's kind of hard to see, at least from my eyes on the map, is this sewer line on the south end, extending the sewer from our existing sewer main that runs down Sand Creek there all the way up to the south end of this development would also be part of ours. So we wanted to give you a color-coded map to let you know that while this agreement really is about infrastructure in and around and adjacent to the Hickory Hill development, the project is larger than that, in that it extends Lambert Road eastward to Shady Oaks. And then we've got this kind of offsite sewer that will be part of our deal as well.
And we're working with the Spires Engineering to make sure that that sewer line has the ability to serve property to the north within that same sewage basin.
Move to approve 6940.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. All right, this time we're going to receive a presentation from Kimley Horn Associates on the amendment to the water, roadway, wastewater land use assumptions, capital improvement plans, and impact fee study, and the amendment of the impact fee ordinance. Rob.
Yeah, Mayor, Council, it's been an interesting 2 years for us as a city. Back in 2020, City Council approved Ordinance 6326, establishing water, wastewater, and roadway impact fees. A few important dates for everybody to know. June 7th, 2021, that the impact fee ordinance went into effect. That's when we started collecting impact fees. For a year, from June 7th, 2021 to June 7th, 2022, was a grace period for any properties that had already been platted. They did not need to pay impact fees. So June 7th, 2022 is when that grace ended, and we've been collecting impact fees for any new development or expanded commercial development. A lot has happened, as you know, since 2020 when this originally happened. We've had an explosion of growth. We've had a lot of infrastructure needs that has changed. And as a result, we contracted with Kimley Horn to help us update that study and see where we're at. In addition to that, we've also looked at annexed areas. So April with Kimley Horn will go over that with you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rob. Mayor, Council, thank you for having me here today. Brief presentation today on impact fees and a minor update. Just as a big overview, we're going to go ahead and go through the impact fee process, a refresher, your role as City Council, updates to the impact fee components, some comparisons, as well as some actions that you can begin thinking about, and then finally looking through with the schedule. So next, during the budget meeting, we were in between the planning step and the analysis step. Today, now that we've calculated the maximum accessible impact fee, we're now moving towards the policy step, similar to what Rob mentioned. So we're going to go ahead and go through with the role of City Council. It would be to review the land use assumptions and the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee comments, which will be coming to you about 5 days or 7 days prior to the City Council actual adoption session, as well as the impact fee capital improvement plan, which is a review, as well as the comments. And finally today, which is reviewing the actual max accessible impact fee and consider the recommendations brought forth. So the components that has already been shown previously are service areas, land use assumptions, the capital improvements plan. And today I'll be honing in on the maximum accessible impact fee, as well as some of the results in terms of comparisons. So a refresher, a service area is establishes the boundary to which funds can be collected, and it really specifies the areas that will be served by the impact fee CIP. That's for roadway, water, and wastewater. For roadway, we're limited to the corporate limits and cannot include the ETJ. For water and wastewater, it is citywide and even can extend beyond out through to the ETJ. So this was previously shown. Going to kind of go quickly here, but go ahead and feel free to let me know if you have any questions on these exhibits. And these are kind of showing these service areas. For roadway, specific to this minor update, there was a revision to limit service areas 3 and 4, which is shown right over here, in which we actually moved it up closer to limit it through Post Creek.
And can I interrupt on that one? One of the reasons is that Post Oak Creek seemed to be the natural boundary between Area 4 and Area 5. Before we were using 1417. So with that being said, Travis Heights, which is on the north side of 1417, would be considered as Area 3 before and would have been eligible for 75% reduction for impact fees for single families. So we thought that Post Oak Creek was more of the natural boundary for Area 3 and Area 4.
Right? And so even from a comparison to echo what Rob was mentioning earlier, within residential units alone, you're seeing double the amount, even greater than that, for both single family, multifamily, and even considering the employment units. And as far as within service areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 previously shown for roadway, we are seeing that increase as well. All right. Now, this is the impact Vcip for water, wastewater, and roadway, which I believe you've been running through quite a bit in previous sessions. So let me know if you have any questions on these. These are all impact fee projects that are growth related that will be eligible for the impact fees. Service area 1 for roadway, 2, 3, and 4. You'll notice from the ones I just ran through, there's a gap study, projects, new widening intersections that were considered for this analysis. So really the meat of this analysis is the max fee calculation. You'll see that it's that green band that we're looking at, which is the recoverable cost of the capacity plan, which is within this 10-year window, which is within 2020 and 2030, given that this is a minor impact fee update. The maximum impact fee per service unit is calculated as the recoverable cost of the capital projects divided by the new service units of demand. So that's where that new calculation is coming into play. For roadway, and here's an example specific to service area 1, we have the cost of total impact fee CIP that's attributable to growth, which is about 14.3 million. Then per chapter 395, we do have a percent of the fee recoverable, so it's basically 50% of that amount, which leaves you at about a little under 7.2 million. Then we take into account some of the financing to increase that to about 9.3 million that can be recoverable. That is then divided by the 10-year growth that I mentioned earlier, which is the service units. So here you'll see that the maximum assessable impact fee per service unit for service area 1 alone is about $380 per vehicle mile for roadway. And if you do the calculation for a single family, that would equal out to about $1,129 for roadway. So these.
And I'll point out, sorry.
Absolutely.
I see some kind of confused faces a little bit. This slideshow is in your packet, and Rob is available at any time to go through the detail. If you want to get detailed, it's there. A lot of these terms we don't normally use, so that's all. I was just gonna.
We also have the study as well as available. We do go through definitions on there. More than happy to share that along as well. So we did the calculation all the way through for the remaining service areas, but you can see how each service area does come out to as far as the max accessible impact fee. Moving forward for water wastewater, it's a little bit easier in that the max accessible impact fee is it's by base unit. So in this case, the base unit is a 3/4 inch base meter. And so for water, same application, we are about $6,807. And for wastewater, about $2,149. So that is the base meter, right when it's pulled at permit. That would be the max accessible if that were to be adopted. So when we compare to 2020, you can go and see it. The max accessible was about $4,478 for water. Now, the adopted amount was a percentage of max, which is about 22.3% or $1,000. And you can also see the same comparisons for wastewater, $657 to $500. For service areas 1, 2, 3, and 4, and while it varied, the adopted amount was $336.70 or $1,000 per single family equivalent. There are also additional adopted collection rates reduced by 75%, similar to what Rob mentioned. For residential, it would be in service area 3, and then so forth for all of the items that are listed on that bulleted list. So for 2022, the study and your capital projects, what is recoverable, as well as taking into account the 10-year growth, the maximum accessible has increased as shown. For water alone, we've gone from $4,478 as your maximum accessible, that's the max bar, to now $6,807. For wastewater, about $2.1 thousand. For service areas 1, 2, and 3, you'll also see that that varies, but once again, that is taking into account all of your capital projects that are necessitated by growth coming through over the 10-year window. You also see the next actual column there is a CIAC recommendation to council. I will be giving pretty much the same presentation tomorrow to Capital Improvements Advisory Committee to also ask them, what type of recommendations would they give to you so that the next time I do come to present at the actual public hearing, those numbers and those values will be presented to you. Moving forward, these are some sample calculations. In terms of single family detached housing for a dwelling unit, we're looking at 1 unit, as well as the service units that you'll see at 2.97. That's related to roadway as a multiplier, as a factor, which we multiply that through. So service areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 related to roadway. But we wanted to give you an example of what that looks like for service area 4 for the different land uses. So for single family detached housing, right at the very top row, for if everything was adopted as is max accessible, you'd be looking at about $11,311. For multifamily, assuming it is 250 dwelling units, you'd be looking at $366,207, and so forth. With a retail strip center at 10,000 square feet, the land uses basically take into account 1,000 square feet for each one. Once again, the calculation is part of the impact fee study, but you would look at about 103,483. Now, once again, this is the maximum accessible. So the overall fee decisions for your consideration, this study calculates the maximum impact fee. The actual collected rate will be set based on the ordinance and cannot exceed the maximum. The council should consider the following decisions when they are looking at the policy. When you are setting impact fees, we often need to consider what percent of the calculated fee should be set. Is that an average cost? Should the fee be similar to the 2020 adopted, considering all the upcoming growth? Should the fee be the same in all roadway service areas previously in 2020, or does it begin to vary? Or should there be different fees for residential and non-residential? These are just some questions to begin with, but of course, council and staff would greatly, answer any questions and go ahead and help answer that. So moving forward are some comparisons to actual local communities. So in 2020, for example, taking into account all those values that I showed earlier with what was adopted, you could see that the 2022 updated Sherman amounts is kind of close to that calculation. But Anna, Melissa, Princeton, Salina, McKinney, and Prosper, a few of those communities have gone through an actual update of their impact fees. And what is that percent increase as compared to what was previously shown back in 2020 is also shown right there in terms of the percentages that you're seeing. So we'll take an example for single family detached housing. Your adopted in 2020 adopted was 2,500. However, for Salina, that equivalent, doing the exact same calculation with their adopted is about 11,378 for impact fees for a single family home. For multifamily, we can change that and look at it. So it's 146,106 for 2020 adopted. If you consider Princeton at 250 units, the impact fee would be 542,578. Moving forward to say retail strip center, for an example, your 2020 adopted 31,665. And for the city of Melissa, while it was a decrease in what they were considering for their adopted impact fees, they would be collecting about 63,229. Now, this is a table with just values for your consideration as you are considering where you would like to set your impact fees for the 2022 minor impact fee update.
Yeah, and the important one about this slide is that since we adopted the impact fees back in 2020, other cities have been increasing their amount as well. And that's that Kimley Horn had the similar, almost the same table back in 2020, and those numbers have all changed and increased. The only one that wasn't apples to apples was multifamily, which we didn't include the percentage just because it was not an exact comparison. But all those other ones were the exact same comparison. So we're seeing the other cities increase it.
So the next steps, as I've mentioned before, we'll be receiving, comments, and so it would be for your consideration at the September public hearing. Schedule. Number 6 will be the council public hearing. The comments should be coming your way by August 30th. And with that, are there any questions or any additions from staff or anything?
And let me highlight a couple of things just to make sure. So there are no decisions to be made tonight. So I wanted to make that clear. Secondly, we are waiting to get recommendations from CIAC. They're just recommendations. They have no authority, but they'll be recommendations based on that committee's review, probably a little bit more detailed review of the study, and then recommended. Also, just to reiterate, we can choose anything between 0 and that maximum that is established. So even if you take no action as a council to change the current rate that we're charging, we still have to revise and update the ordinance that sets the maximum. So we'll be doing that either on September 6th or the following meeting. Whatever you guys decide, we still have to take action on that. So one of the things to help prepare staff is I was just going to get a little bit of like feedback on, do you have questions? Are you leaning a certain way as it relates to increasing our fee? And I'll get with Sean after this as well and kind of get his thoughts. But over the next few weeks, we'll be getting more information and recommendations. But generally speaking, the max for the plan that we're on right now for single family residential was about $7,000 and some change. This shows the what we're actually charging, but it went from 7,000 or whatever that number was ish to 11,300. That other table. So go back to keep going forward, maybe. Yep. So now that number for area 4 is 11,300. What's being highlighted here is, as expected, those numbers went up. So you have even more cap room to go up if you so choose. So what we would want to know from you by the 6th, hopefully, is do you have an appetite to consider doing more? As we talked about 2 years ago, what we're charging now is pretty low, very low, the lowest of these peers that we've talked about. So that's one point. The second point I want to make for you to think about is, so we effectively have just started this program, right? We although it was adopted in summer of 21, it effectively had a grace period for a year for most of that. So we've had very little revenues that have come in from this program because most people were grandfathered or graced, I guess. So we don't really have enough information today historically to say, oh, well, here's the impact that this impact fee program is having on the city. So there's that to consider. So if you wanted to leave it the same to get more data on what kind of impact this impact fee is having, then that's one other thing to consider as well.
So if we were to take no action, but let's say in 6 months, we wanted to come back and we had some viable data, economic data at that time, could we take action then, or does it have to be at a particular time?
Yeah, you can take action. There'll be action to adopt the maximums, but the no action you're speaking of is not changing what we're actually charging. So we can bring that back at any time.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to give the council,
we can
do whatever the council sees fit, especially when we get the CIAC recommendations back.
But for sure, you want to adopt the updated study because it includes areas that have annexed recently that we want to make sure and collect those impact fees.
But we can adjust the percentage of the rate whenever we want.
Right.
I would like to see sort of apples to apples comparison about averaging across all 4 areas versus not, to see if there would be economic incentive for some builders to build in other areas and not others. So can we have that?
Can go to prepare that. It's averaging.
Just looking at it this evening, I'm glad we did not know what was going to happen in 2020, to Sherman. So I'm glad we adopted the impact fees because I'm not sure what we would do about roads and sewers and everything else with everything that's going on. I do think we need to evaluate it, but I don't have enough information right now. But I do think that we're going to have to change the impact fees, but I'm just not sure that I'm comfortable making that choice, obviously, right this minute, based on the information we've got.
Yeah.
So
We don't have to take action.
Yeah, you don't have to take
Yes,
it
I
tonight,
understand
and we may not. I mean, from a historical standpoint, 3 weeks isn't going to make much difference between now and when we'll have, the CIAC's recommendation. So, if you're looking for evidence of what kind of impact this could have, we don't have that historically. We can make some assumptions, like Texas Instruments, huge, right? Not only huge project, but millions of square feet, big. 24-inch lines. I mean, that one's probably going to be, my rough calc is about 2 million per phase. Now, that sounds like a lot of money until you think about, well, we're spending $250 million to get water to the west side, including TI. But $2 million through this program is $2 million more than we had before we implemented the program. So what we can't tell you today, because a lot of those big ones have not hit yet, is what kind of impact. So if you wanted to wait for a little bit as a council, let us get a few more months under our belt now that we're past the grace period. And now that we're approaching some of these large developments coming on, we would have better data in a few months if you wanted to wait and take a look at it. If you'll direct us, hey, bring it back in whatever, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months.
Okay.
Hey, Robbie, sorry, chiming in here from the Zoom. Let me make sure I understand that as well. The impact fees just started being charged in June. Isn't that correct?
Well, partly. They started being charged in June of 21 for those that didn't already have something platted. But most of the things that we've seen since then, they already had plats. There was kind of a mad dash to get things replatted by June of this year, June of 22. So there's been actually very little. I think the numbers so far are something like $200,000 total since we implemented the program in fees. And we've had hundreds and hundreds of houses and other developments. So while we just effectively started this June, it technically started June 7th of 2021.
I got you. But if, in theory, the vast majority of our impacts are not, they just have been started to getting paid here after June of this year.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah.
Have you found these impact fees have deterred single family home builders from coming to Sherman?
We have not seen that.
So real quickly, April, could you give a quick explanation of who the CIAC is and why we should listen to them? Just, tell us who they are and what it means to us.
So the Capital Improvements Advisory Committee can be made up of your Planning and Zoning Commission. Does have to have one member of the ETJ as a representative. Now, 40% or so of the CIAC should also be representatives of construction industry, planning, developers, and so forth, to have that background knowledge to also understand what's going on even within your local community.
So these are all local folks.
They will be familiar, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
What if we establish like a max, say, like Roy was saying, 7,000, and then 2023 we're gonna be at $13,000 on average. How is that gonna affect? I mean, I'm a little confused.
If the max that we can charge is $11,000, and we say, we want to take 50%, right? Or you can say, we could charge 11, but we want to cap it at 5,000. we can cap it at whatever. We just have to legally adopt that according to the calculations. The most that we can charge is 11,000. All of our deciding how much or little of that we're going to charge every year is a percentage or whatever that we say.
Where is that other, like, if we're at 14,000, and we're only established at 11, where did that $3,000 come from?
Because of increased in values of homes and stuff like that. Is that right?
Yeah.
The increase to go to the 11,000 is based on.
That's based off of the max accessible. So that would be the maximum that one could collect for single families.
But the reason that goes up is because our projected cost of infrastructure in proportion to the how many we're dividing it by has changed as well. So we would expect in times of growth where there's a lot of infrastructure to be added, that this number would go up.
Right.
And it has.
And if you go up by the number of expected units, the inverse could be true.
Yeah, if there's I mean, you can change this number 11,000 is really just a mathematical, I know it's an average, but the calculation of the rates is just very basically the capital cost versus, divided by some number of units. And either of those units can change that outcome of that number. So if they go up proportionate, you might not have much of a change, but what we saw then, if it went up from $7,000 to 11 or single family equivalent, is the infrastructure costs went up at a greater rate or greater proportion than the number of units divided by. Right. And I would expect that to be the case when you have large industrial types of projects that. So anyway.
Can I ask a question here? So 2020, it just seems like we were conservative just starting in this, but things have changed substantially in the last 2 years. So we have way more leverage now in this process. So just want to make sure you look, the numbers are pretty conservative.
Yeah, just to fill you in, I think where we came down is we wanted to have them, but we didn't want to scare anybody away by having them. Sure. And we wanted to be the best price in the marketplace.
Now everybody wants to be here. So there's some leverage, right?
And you can I think that's a great line of thought. I'd love to explore that further.
And you can see with those other cities, this is what their actual charges are. Those are not samples.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we'll bring this back September 6th and have more conversation about it.
Thank you, April.
And we can have more conversation between now and then with me or staff if you want.
Okay, very good.
Thanks, April.
All right. For this last item, consider scheduling a joint meeting of the City Council, 11 a.m. Thursday, September 22nd, 2022. The purpose of the meeting will be to review the draft 2022 comprehensive plan and trails master plan, to review the proposed changes to the general zoning ordinance.
Move to approve.
Okay. Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Rob, you have.
I was going to explain what we
Oh, explain what we just.
Hey, Rob, tell us a little bit about
One thing that came up in our meeting before is that our wonderful city attorney could not make it for the 22nd. And we had an alternative date for September 21st. Ryan is really involved in reviewing the zoning ordinance updates. So if there's a desire to have this meeting, special called meeting on the 21st instead of the 22nd, that would be.
You could do either one. Let me tease the meeting on the 22nd. So half of the meeting roughly is going to be about comp plan. The other half is going to be about the zoning and development ordinances that Rob and his crew, including Ryan, have worked on. Now, I hope that we're not spending, no offense, Ryan, hope we're not spending most of our hour on the legal issues of the zoning changes. It's probably going to be more meat and potatoes of just the actual, pragmatic changes that Rob is recommending. So it would be great if Ryan could be here, but our focus of those meetings isn't going to be on the legal aspects. It's going to be on the practical aspects of those changes. So Having said that, you can stay with your meeting on the 22nd, knowing that Ryan's not going to be here and Ryan has a lot of time invested in reviewing the legal aspects of that. Or if you felt strongly that you did want him to be here, then that meeting needs to be on the 21st.
I'm available for either day. So why don't we just check and see, is there anybody on the council that can't make it?
And in Ryan's absence, he would be sending someone else from his firm that could answer basic, issues that come up, but wouldn't be as detailed versed on these issues. So
A half a Ryan.
yes.
Gotcha.
That's pretty,
that's
salty.
I'm agnostic. If anybody,
I can't be here on the 21st. I'll be out of town.
Oh, really?
okay, there we
Okay.
go. As substitute Ryan it is.
I would, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, no further action on our motion and vote. So we'll go to council comments. Henry, I'm gonna start with you tonight.
All right, I just want to say that we got a couple of festivals coming up. September 10th, the Hispanic Heritage Council is going to have a festival at the municipal grounds. And the following weekend is the art festival. So I hope everybody can come.
Me too.
Okay, I want to thank our city street staff for redoing the parking lot, patty corner from Old Iron Post. It looks fantastic. I did see people parked there. I didn't see any lines. I thought you were going to put lines eventually. I know, complain. Okay, but if there's anybody else that has a similar area that would be interested in allowing the city to use their parking.
Can we do yellow lines instead of white? I think it'll pop.
I have a parking lot that might be.
Oh, I meant downtown.
Oh.
I meant it downtown,
I need that.
near the square.
Yeah, Big D.
Nothing on this end, Mayor.
No comment.
Okay, just a couple of announcements. Sherman Library will host Midnight Madness game night on Friday, August 19th. It's a great chance for those 18 and older to meet their neighbors. Come enjoy a great night of games and food. Dino Days at Sherman Museum still has a few more days left. It will close August 20th. Be sure and check that out. And finally, tonight, don't forget to mark your calendars for our bonus Hot Summer Nights concert on September 29th at 7. We'll have a huge crowd on hand to see Jody Messina. Hope you all can attend.
I do have something, Mayor.
Okay, what you got, Big D?
I want to thank Parks for moving forward with the MLK Park restrooms. It's been well needed and good job. Good job moving forward with that.
Excellent. All right, seeing as there's no other business or executive session, we'll take a motion to
Move to adjourn.
Second.
the motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, council.
Oh my gosh, no executive.
Teresa.
I know, right?
Why don't we do?
It is.
Sorry about that, Mayor.